Now joining me is Cliff Maloney, political strategist. Someone told me that you are responsible for helping win 300 America First political campaigns. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's a fun battle. What I try to do is go out and help these candidates that are fighting the real fight to defend the Constitution, rule of law, and the principles that, the America First movement believes in. Fortunately, we see so many of these, let's call them, kind of establishment types or weak Republicans that run. And so what I aim to do, company Mobilize the Message, we go out and we help a lot of state candidates to try to build this bench, right? To try to build a minor leagues, if you will, of America First campaigns. And yeah, I'm blessed to say, we've won over 300 with the different projects I've been working on since 2018. And, that should be the focus. People get really frustrated and they look at these big Senate races and these big congressional races, and they're important. But if you really want to make a difference, I've always tried to encourage activists focus at the state level, the state and local level where you can actually get people into this corrupt system that aren't corrupt, right? That want to fight the corruption. And at those levels, you can win. And so we've had tremendous success figuring out how to strategize and get people to run for state and local office and win.
Today, a sad day for America. Donald Trump set to be arraigned. Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labat has stated publicly, which, I think he was just trying to get a reaction, that they're going to take Donald Trump's mugshot. He won't be exempt from the booking process. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a day that everybody should remember. I think it's easy for people to think, oh, this is just a partisan moment. Republicans will support him and Democrats won't. That's completely wrong. This is a moment that everybody should be standing up and saying, how in the world are we not calling a spade a spade? This is a political hit job. It's a political persecution by a corrupt district attorney. One big thing to note about Georgia, this is not New York, right? This is not a state where the Republicans have no control of any of the parts of government. This is Georgia. Republicans control everything. And what's really astounding is how much the Republicans have failed. And this is something the America First, the true liberty and conservative movement should understand. This should be a case study of why they failed. Colton Moore has presented this letter. It's the first step to launching an emergency session. I know you've interviewed him, got tons of views of people understanding what he's trying to do. And it is the first step to having this emergency session to investigate Fani Willis. Now, here's the best part. The real first step, once they get into session, is to defund her, right? They control the power of the purse. But what has happened in Georgia? The Brian Kemps and the leadership have said, hey, we don't want to do anything. We'd rather sit back. We'd rather be quiet. Let's be safe. Meanwhile, all of the Georgia voters, all of the Republicans in Georgia who voted these people in these super red districts, they all assume, of course, they'll sign on to the letter. I mean, look nationally, Colton came out and Newt Gingrich, Donald Trump himself, Charlie Kirk. You look at activists and influencers. Steve Bannon this morning had him on his show. People across the spectrum that believe in the conservative movement are all assuming that Georgia Republicans are leading on this. They're not just leading, they're hiding. They're afraid. And so I have to tell your viewers out there that it is insane that there are so many Republicans, when it's time to act, when it's time to lead, they're completely absent.
Colton brought up a good point. It's like they're almost scared to step up to the plate because everyone's getting indicted over this.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, right? Is you lack courage, right? You lack leadership. People lack a plan or a vision. And I mean, I would never guess that a 29-year-old kid in Colton Moore, now I'm 32, but I can call him a kid, that he would be the one person who stepped forward and said, no, we're at war. Like, we need to have an offensive plan here to defund her and find out what the hell is going on. But you're dealing with a lot of people who typically look to leadership, they fall in line, and they want things to be simple. These are not simple times, right? These are not times to sit back and try to figure out what the next strategic play is. You have to go on offense. And that's why I commend Colton Moore.
You just raised a perfect question. In my hand, I'm holding a letter. This was sent to me from a fan, someone that watches my content. Her rent's going up from $1,900 a month to $2,671. Do you think that the indictment is a calculated attempt to distract from policy discussions and real issues that are affecting this country, such as what Biden had in his policies have done to the economy.
Yeah, and I think this is why Richmond, north of Richmond, has taken off. I mean, the song really talks about some of the basic things that working class Americans care about, right? The dollar ain't worth shit. It's taxed to death, right? We're still giving money out to those on welfare that aren't working, that weigh, 300 pounds for their fudge rounds. He's coming out with more songs about war and about some of these things, but it's the destruction of the middle class. And if you're working class in America right now, you feel pretty left behind. And that's not a talking point, right? That is why they have to distract with some of these things, because you have people in DC that control money. They continue to raise our taxes. They give it out to people that are connected. And as I always say, there's a big club, but we ain't in it, right? And the working class and the blue collar folks, that's why politically, there are ways to fight back, but this is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Right. This is the time to fight. And I think, my heart goes out to the viewer who sent you that letter, because it is the truth. A lot of people are feeling it, but who's not feeling it are the insiders in DC. To them, the status quo must go on. And whether you love Trump, whether you hate Trump, you have to admit that Trump is a threat to the status quo. Right. You can be mad at some of the things, or say he didn't go after the deep state enough, or his spending went up. Sure, there's a lot of things I'd like to see that could go better in a Trump second term. But the reality is he is a threat. And when you have a threat, you need to take that threat out. And for those that don't see it, I look to my friends that, would consider themselves to be moderate Democrats. You have to open your eyes and understand it's a threat, right? These corrupt district attorneys, and believe me, there are plenty of them across America, even in red counties and red states. You need to look at them to realize that we have lost the sense of them using prosecutorial judgment. They have obfuscated. They have completely given up. They've bowed to the woke mob. They've bowed to these activists, and they have decided, listen, it's easier this way to go after political opponents. It's easier to target them than deal with the woke mob. We have a lack of backbone in this country. And I think that people need to realize Trump is the threat. So, of course, they're going to go after him with everything they have.
I'm glad you brought that up. The district attorneys across the nation, on January 22nd, 2023, it was revealed that George Soros invested over $40 million. This is a New York Post article, that George Soros invested over $40 million assisting district attorneys to get elected, to target political opponents, and to lower the priority on real criminal offenders. And he's backed 75 total prosecutors, 3 of which listed in this article are targeting Donald Trump.
Look, politics is the adjudication of power. I think people get it wrong. They think politics is some public policy game, and it's, about the betterment of the nation. One of the things that we teach is politicians care about 3 things. They care about getting elected, getting reelected, and getting elected to higher office. And people always laugh when I say that, but it's the adjudication of power. Who controls who? And we give the government the right to hold arms, to have a police force, and to enact these laws. And if you don't follow them, guess what? They'll lock you away and put you in jail. And that's a very significant power. Now, the joke I always say is the real definition of politics is poly, which is many, and ticks, which are blood-sucking creatures. And I think you're seeing that right now, right? And these DAs. And so when you talk about Soros, of course he put $40 million in. When you have a political ideology and you realize the power to advance that is through politics, is through electoral politics, and those that control the decision-making process, yes, George Soros doesn't play games. The left, they are very serious people, and the right fails to understand this. That's why you see Colton Moore's letter, and people are saying, oh, well, we have to be the bigger people, and we have to sit back and relax. Bullshit. This is the time to fight back. Let's be serious about this. They're obviously targeting Trump. Defund them. Really? That is a power that is clearly held by the Georgia House and Senate. The impeachment process, clearly defined in the Constitution. But weak Republicans, timid Republicans, those that are afraid to actually be bold, would rather find any excuse in the book rather than do the will of their constituents and actually fight for the things that they know to be truth. That is an epidemic within the Republican Party that we must fix.
What do you think about this mugshot ordeal? Do you think they're going to end up taking Donald Trump's mugshot? Is the Secret Service going to allow that? And if so, do you think it will become a symbol of unity for Trump supporters?
Look, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said, I think Trump's going to struggle to get reelected. I think, he'd have a good shot at the primary. I think the primary now is over. I think Donald Trump will be the nominee. I think that what you're seeing is I think moderates are going to break towards Trump. I think that this whole situation is so obvious to anybody with half a brain that I think that they're going to realize, like, man, they're really putting the screws to this guy for stuff that they never put the screws to people on the other side. So, yeah, I think it's going to backfire. And I do think they'll take the mugshot. I do think they'll use it to fundraise. And I do think they'll use it as a political maneuver to try to benefit them. But I think in the end, they're going to realize that normal America, swing state voters, moderate types in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, in Michigan, in all these swing states, I think they're going to have a problem. They're going to say, wow, you guys really just went all in on this. And what are your solutions for the country? You've just made this whole entire race about targeting Trump and about Trump's actions, calling for, fairness within an election. So, yeah, will they take the mugshot? Absolutely. Democrats never miss an opportunity to fundraise. They never miss an opportunity to go on offense. And it's about time Republicans step up and realize, are we going to play ball? Or are we just going to hang out like we're in a sandbox at some, playground? It's the real world. And this is a battle for the soul of the country. We should step up and actually fight, not sit this one out.
Well said. One last question for you. Why do you think, in your professional opinion, that elected officials are so out of touch with working class America?
Yeah, I think people have to understand how the sausage is made. So right now in Georgia, you've got Colton Moore with this letter that 100% of Republican constituents support. We must defund Fani Willis, the corrupt district attorney targeting Trump. So why is it that there are so many senators who have yet to sign on, who represent all of these constituencies, these heavy red districts? It's because when you peek behind the curtain, people like Brian Kemp, people in leadership, they all have the position they want the rest of them to hold. And so they lay down the law and say, this is the position you're going to hold. It's the same way that any of the votes occur, right? When there's a budget, when there's, somebody that wants to put an amendment forward. No. You have to run it up the ladder. You have to get approval. You'll wait your turn. You'll sit in line. So what happens is in situations like this, you're going to see a real battle between Colton Moore on the side of the grassroots and the rest of the Republican leadership in the Senate and all the Republican senators about which has more of a force, which has more of a pressure. I told you politicians care about three things: getting elected and reelected and elected to higher office. So you're going to see this force play out. When does the grassroots, the side that Colton Moore's on, when does that pressure become so much that they want the pressure to end and they sign his letter? Or does the benefit of having the backing of the governor and all of his money and all of his special interests, does that outweigh the pressure of the grassroots? That is a real political battle. That's not talking points. That's not some, right versus left fake conflict you'll see on C-SPAN. That is going to be the battle over the next month to 3 months as this process is ongoing. Are they going to stand with the grassroots? Can we expose them enough that they take enough fire that they say, you know what, it's not worth it? Or will the special interests just continue to pat them on the back and tell them to ignore the grassroots? It's a decision that every single senator in Georgia has. And I really, God willing, hope they make the right decision to stand with Colton Moore and to stand with the people of Georgia who they are supposedly supposed to represent.
And stand with the people of America as well, the people that live outside of Georgia, that the majority, I would say the majority of people think this is just a political witch hunt at this point. And Fani Willis has been I can't even say it's an accusation. She has a history of unethical behavior. It's been proven. She was removed from being able to investigate Burt Jones because she held a fundraiser for his political opponent. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but here, let me just put this last comment out there. Who cares The reality is we're not even calling to impeach, right? Colton is literally saying, I want to come back for an emergency session. We want to defund her immediately and just figure out what the hell's going on, just based off 3 or 4 of these incidents, right? Not just with the lieutenant governor, not just with her putting out an indictment before the grand jury response. I mean, you can go down the list.
Yeah.
All he's saying, this is why it should be a softball for Republicans. He's just saying, let's defund her. Let's launch an investigation and let's let the facts tell us where to go. And if the facts say, hey, there's corruption here, which we assume there is, then impeach. But talk about how milquetoast and how weak these Republicans have to be that they're not even willing to sign a letter just to say we want to investigate. I mean, that's how much you have a lack of courage and how much the special interests, the lobbyists, and the elites control the legislative process.
Wow.
That's all I'll say about that.
Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. Cliff Maloney, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, sir.
Appreciate y'all. Keep up the fight. Take care.
All right. Take it easy.